do that for your credit. Okay, welcome you guys. So I want to start by saying thank you to everyone for coming today. My name is Feijo. I'm a professor here in English, teaching writing and literature courses. I'd like to thank my students in particular for showing up today. I need to hear you guys. Where are you? Yeah, this is not going to be a quiet talk, just so we know. So my students know this, but I don't believe in trigger warnings. But if I did, this whole talk would probably be a trigger warning. So just know that. But I also think life is a little bit of a trigger. So we're just going to see how we all feel. But if you need to at any point to step out to gather yourself, fine, try to come back. Okay, that's where we're at. Okay, I'm going to share parts of a memoir I've been working on, in part through some incredible support from Kirkwood through a program called the Endowed Chair. So I just want to say thank you to them. They're not all here because there's other meetings going on, but it's such a privilege to be able to work on this kind of work and actually get a little bit of release time to do so. And it's really an honor at a community college. So I'm really appreciative of that. I want to pause for a second to say how happy I am to get to have this space. To share a work in progress is often pretty scary, right? You're working on it all the time. You're invested in it. Most of my students know I think that community happens with shared experience, with developing a little empathy, enriching some awareness, potentially getting a little introduction to understanding about people's lives and experiences that you may not have an entry point into, right? So I kind of love that feeling, but it also requires that you commit for this moment to be part of this community, right? To kind of talk about, think about, listen to stuff that's potentially hard to hear, right? About who we are, who I am. So thank you for being part of this community today. I have to say that again, I have a lot of students in here, and I've watched them burst through writing in so many ways. And so I'm grateful that they're here to be part of that for me too. So thank you guys. I keep wanting to wink at all of you, and somehow that seems inappropriate. So I'm going to start with just a little background about foster kids, because I think sometimes we don't know. We tend to be pretty invisible, even here on campus, but I can let you know that we are here. There are students who they find me. So I'm working on how to make this a little more visible if we want to be. But there are currently 442,000 foster kids in the United States. Roughly 60,000 of those live in the state of California, which is where my memoir takes place. There's about 7,000 in Iowa. The numbers are a little hard to trace down, right? We get lost. So we end up disappearing. We sometimes go missing. We get lost in systems that aren't set up to really protect us, right? So in terms of percentages, more than 31% of former foster children experience homelessness within 2 years of aging out, which happens at about the age of 18. We have higher rates of substance abuse, mental health issues, unemployment. We have higher incarceration rates. We often don't graduate high school. We don't go to college. And if we do, 3% of us graduate from a four-year institution. It's a really low number. In terms of graduate school, there are no numbers. So less than 2%, it's understood, get advanced degrees. There is really little to no evidence about what happens to us after we get out, other than incarceration rates or death rates, right? In most states, not all, but in most, at the age of 18, we lose access to all financial and educational resources that were typically offered through social services up until that point. For some of us, this aging out happens at 18, right? But for others of us, we figure out alternate means to get out. So some of us get permission from social workers to get married. That's what I did at 16. The court is really happy to do that. We're no longer than their responsibility, right? Sometimes that comes with a cost, but that's the route that I took. To complete this memoir meant a journey into myself, into the streets I called home, and the hallways I roamed as a lost kid, wanting to read, but not having a safe space to do so. To write my story, I had to go back to these scenes in my mind, to homes and holding facilities, looking for my own kind of proof of life, right? Like, when did I exist? Where was I? I found a number, my name, codes that were supposed to define me: abused, runner, incorrigible. That's it. It was pre-internet. So there are no more records. Well, I was told there's probably a box. There's probably a box somewhere in a warehouse in Oakland decaying with thousands of others. And you all, if you know me, you know that I tried to get access to that warehouse. It didn't work. But it also made sense to me that we're lost. Because to be a foster child still, but especially in the late 80s in the crack epidemic in Oakland, was to be ignored, forgotten, abandoned. Lawyers, judges, social workers, and layers of absence, right? To age out of foster care is to begin life 10 steps behind, with statistics painting a picture of homelessness, again, drug use, suicide. Watch any episode of Law and Order. You guys, Law and Order Special Victims Unit in particular. Foster kids abound, injured criminals and past that dictate dismal futures. Fiction brings us foster kids with babies and HIV, killers and survivors mingling on the streets with no hope. Nonfiction has some space opening up, right? Room to bear our stories and the complexities they inhabit. Yet still, we are often doomed to failure or the grandiose success story, without room for nuances, right, of a life lived, traumas endured, lessons learned. So, educational memoirs. They're powerful, they're empowering. They're texts that show education as one like portal to another side, to success or a way out, but it isn't easy. Mine is not a Horatio Alger story. It's not where we're going. So what is the story underneath abandonment? What is underneath poverty and lack so deep that sometimes your skin itches with need? Why are we pushed out at 18 by a system that claims to offer protection and guidance? Where do we go? And in the between time, when we run or escape or search out belonging, how do we survive? Who is there for us? We're not one thing. So as Lydia Yuknevich writes, we are not the story made of us. We are layered with trauma, but we are also holders of experience and perseverance, triumph, gut level grittiness that propels us, right? We are people that seek belonging and access to something better. My work in progress, entitled More Than Anything, a memoir of survival, is the story of my experience as a foster child, an avid reader, a teen mother, and a survivor on the streets in Oakland, California. That's the overview. Thank you, Lottie. Thank you, Lottie. So, I love that there was a bark. So, I think that maybe what we're traditionally used to with faculty events or lecture series is, we're going to talk about some PowerPoints. I'm going to hand you out some things, and we're not going to do any of that. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to make this more of like a reading. So I'm going to read to you an excerpt from my book, and then I'm going to discuss it briefly a little bit, layer it a little bit for you. And then I'm going to read a little more just to give you some snippets. And then I want to kind of open it up for questions and answers. Does that feel good to everybody? Okay, that's what we're gonna do. All right, so I'm writing a book about my body and my mother, the way she manipulated me, the way her abuse changed my DNA, how I became a ward of the court in foster care, then a habitual runner, and then a hooker on the streets of Oakland and Richmond by the age of 14. My mother's terror over me taught me how to move in the world. Then somehow that terror crystallized into kind of a determination. But the shame she wove into me, it remains me. I talk to it now. I don't let it free, but it's still in there. I hate her. I owe her. Everything is a memory. I didn't know if there were any other 10-year-old girls who like to go to bed at 7 or 8, but I couldn't wait. That's when I could read. I had to listen for footsteps and be careful not to get caught with the small white light next to my bed turned on. But if I waited, she would seem to forget that I was even there. Turning the pages of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Where are the older people? Okay. I envisioned the life I could have. Married parents with a working dad and a mom who was spunky and creative. Not mean, a grandma who called all the time, cared about things like my grades and worried about me. Worried about me. I liked that Margaret's life in the book wasn't perfect. She had to move to New Jersey to her dad's new job. She had to leave her friends, the neighborhood, and the school she knew. Her mom made her mad sometimes. Margaret wanted things she didn't get. A heart-shaped mirror over a white dressing table wrapped with a fluffy skirt. Her mother didn't like it. Margaret didn't get it. But Margaret was still okay. And she loved her family, grew to love her new school, made friends, still saw her grandmother, and even got her period, the mark of a budding woman. As I read, I would become her, seeing myself running down the stairs of a New Jersey split-level house in a cul-de-sac neighborhood, running through sprinklers with girlfriends, eating ice cream cones from clean, cold freezers, and taunting the mean boys. I wanted to be her in every way. I wanted to grow up too. I wanted good friends and loving parents and a place to feel safe. Even when Margaret had bad things happen, an argument between her grandmother and her parents, a canceled trip to New York, it was never really that bad. Nobody ever got hit. Margaret always recovered. There were more good times to be had. As she struggled, her life remained hopeful, and I was jealous. There was always a part of me that knew I would never make it there, to that place of safety and love. We moved a lot. One of my fourth grade teachers, Miss Whipple, was tall and blonde with tortoiseshell glasses that framed hazel eyes. She used to glide across the classroom with confidence. Miss Whipple really listened when she asked for an answer to a question. And I started to think she might actually like us, the kids. She seemed happy on the inside. I liked her immediately. My mother did not. I got the feeling that Miss Whipple had some power my mother wanted but couldn't have. When my mom called to cancel a teacher's conference or recorrected my homework and sent it back, Miss Whipple didn't shy away. She seemed to see through my mom in some way. For that reason, there appeared to be a truce. They just wouldn't speak. This opened the door for me to talk without having to worry that my mom would drop in during the day to check on what I was doing in class or fly into some prearranged conference complaining about my sloppy handwriting, lazy attitude, and the stupid ass shit I was being taught. When Miss Whipple asked me about my life, I told her, mostly. Miss Whipple taught us how to cook apples outside with tinfoil solar panels. She had us do book reports on our favorite books instead of assigning books like all the other teachers. She loved to read. The walls of our classroom were covered in books, and there were chairs and sectioned off reading areas, not desk chairs attached to metal desks with tops that opened, soft chairs wedged into a corner of National Geographic magazines, a rickety rocker with a comfy pillow balanced between two bookshelves full of history books and popular kid fiction. I loved being surrounded by the books. I must have read them all. One day, Miss Whipple pulled me aside after I turned in a book report on a book I can't remember. She said, "Your work is great, but you don't seem to connect with the characters." She asked me what my favorite books were. I told her, "The Cat Ate My Jumpsuit," "Any Judy Blume." Miss Whipple was quiet. "What do you have in common with the characters in those books?" I shrugged. "Nothing, but I wish I did." She stared at me for a long time before she just told me, "Take your seat." The next day, I was nervous. I felt like I had exposed something, even though I hadn't said much of anything. But Miss Whipple had been my teacher for the longest that year. I think she knew more than I ever told her. At the end of the day, she called my name as I walked towards the exit door. "Michelle, come here, please." I started to panic a little, but as soon as I turned, I saw her and I relaxed. She was smiling at me and holding a hardback book with a beaten up red cover. I walked over and she handed me the book. "I think this is a book you'll really enjoy. I see you in these pages." I want the book, but I think it might be a trap. I can't borrow anything. What if I lose it? What if I never come back to this school? She said, "If you lose it, you weren't meant to have it. If you keep it, you were. And if you love it, you may call it yours." I loved how she used "may" like that. It sounded wrong. Was it? The pages were yellow and the edges of the cover corners starting to fray. The title in pale gold on the spine read, "The Soul Brothers and Sister Lou." I waited until I was on the bus to open the book. On the first page was her name, Cynthia Whipple. And below her name was a signature in cursive, Kristen Hunter. The author had signed it. I couldn't believe she trusted me with this kind of a treasure. Bedtime couldn't come fast enough that night. So when I got the book from Miss Whipple, thank you, baby. It's the book. So when I got the book from Miss Whipple, I smelled it. So I'm gonna smell it. It's primal. Because kind of urgent. I can still detect the scent of her classroom, if that makes any sense, in the spine. My memory picks up kind of what she holds on to for me in this book. So I want to read you from two little parts. I love it. It's like, yeah, it's the thing that I always kept in my backpack when I ran. So first page, Loretta Hawkins was walking home from school very slowly. Every day she did this, taking the long way home with very short steps because she was in no hurry to get there. It was not that Loretta didn't love her mama and her 7 brothers and sisters. It was just that she wanted a place, even a corner of a room that was all her own, so she could have her own friends over to visit. But with 9 of them, no 10, in a 5-room house, there were no corners to spare. Loretta wished for the 919th time that she had some place to go between school and supper time, some place where she could talk and have fun and be with her friends. But on the south side, the part of the city where she lived, there was no place to be with your friends except the sidewalks and alleys. And I'm going to skip to one more part. Page 4. This is Mama talking. Don't you let me catch you fooling around with those bad boys in the back streets and alleys. You see what happened to Arnitha. If the same thing happened to you, it would kill me. Loretta didn't really think a thing like that could kill her mother. She was too big and too strong and too wise for that. When Arnitha's baby Coralie was born, she'd just taken it calmly and started raising it like one of her own. Of course, it was supposed to be a bad thing that had happened to Arnitha. It was especially sad because Arnitha hadn't even been in love with James Lee Walters. She just hung around his house after school because she had no other place to go either. Still, with Mama taking care of the baby, Arnitha was free to get dressed up and go out on dates and have as much fun as she ever had. Of course, Arnitha had been forced to drop out of school. One thing Loretta was sure of was that she would finish school. She glanced down at her battered pile of books. English was her favorite subject. The teacher, Miss Hodges, always praised the way Loretta recited poetry. She'd gotten A's in English and music and history last term, and B's in all of her other subjects, except math, which we failed. Everyone said Loretta was smart. She'd even skipped the 7th grade. So now she was the youngest one in the 10th grade at Southern High, 14. She would go on. She would graduate. And maybe after that, she would work for a while and save up money to go to college. Though college was such a grand and faraway idea that she never even talked about it at home. So I love that book. When I read that as a young child, when it's handed to me by my teacher, who I think has kind of seen into my soul a little bit, I found parts of myself. And I felt like she knew that I would, right? So a little bit of trust started to bloom, just the tiniest bit. But then, as things move on, and I'm on the street and negotiating multiple homes, et cetera, I ran into the issue of privilege. My foster sister, Angelique, is dead. HIV as a result of street life. My foster sister, Crystal, dead. Drugs. My foster brother, Danny, dead. Believed to be suicide by train. Drugs. My foster brother, Stephen, jail. Drugs. My foster brother, Malik, dead. Gangs. My foster sister, Mimi, lost. Cindy, dead. Suzanne, lost and homeless. Sharday, lost. And Ariana, who we knew as Kool-Aid, is lost. My whiteness always protected me. In classrooms, through 13 placements on the streets, in strange apartments, in corner stores, at police stations, and in the hallowed halls of academia right here in Iowa. I was abused, oppressed, traumatized in many, many ways, but still my whiteness protected me. My blonde hair, blue-eyed, freckle face protected me. I had been taught to read. I was taught to read well. I had access to books and teachers who encouraged me to read them. I was called smart. I was told if anyone can get out of this, you can. I was encouraged with shame and reminded my duty of sorts was to get out because I could. Miss Whipple saw me and she gave me a book. She saw a young girl who looked like her, and she helped me. Later, when academic advisors, professors, and bougie white students sneered, constantly corrected, and told me all the ways I didn't belong in the fancy programs, I rooted my feet, let the 13-year-old girl who knew things about the streets and men and even books smile back and say, we'll see. I'd walk away, find another way in, whatever I needed to do. That's privilege in action. And I have a little stubborn internal fire. Some of y'all know that. I don't know where that fire comes from, the one that ignites when I feel threatened. It's animalistic. I'm a survivor, but I'm a girl brought back to life with words. So I'm going to read you one more section. Are you okay? Okay, one more section. And then we'll do a little quick question and answers. And then I know you guys want to go eat. Okay. Oh, hi, Iowa City. We didn't even say hi. They can't respond to us, but Iowa City's there. So we'll just, what's up? All right. So this is from another section in the book a little later. I'm going to give you a little warning for language. But for 2 years, there are no pictures of me. I don't exist. It's a long drive to Livermore. A family has room. My memory leads the way. Will she find me here? Is she looking? A social worker shows up in the morning and doesn't know my name. She asks, you want the front or the back? I sit in the front to keep my eyes on her. She doesn't talk, or I don't. It's silence and cool breeze until the hills. I'm trying to figure out what it is about social workers. I've met 2 in a week and they all seem the same. Then it's cow shit stink and Livermore dust, different flags. Whiteness, a banner, and cut-off shorts, AC/DC tank tops, and boys in feathered hair. I remember where I'm going. I worry about being found. I already missed the last home. My girls, the neighborhood, the corner store. How do you act white? The house has a pool, she says as we pull up. This isn't the Livermore I thought I knew. It's shaped like a bean. From the front door, I can see straight through what looks like the living room, a couch and 2 chairs, a television, windows behind the couch that look out to the pool. The kitchen is a galley to the right along the same window, dining room with a big round table piled with books and backpacks and mail. Clearly no one eats there. The windows become a sliding glass door by the dining room opening to the bean. I don't see anybody swim in it, ever. I don't understand the pool. It's not a big pool like the one on Skyline in Oakland, hot summer afternoons with shiny, different colored bodies. And it wasn't a motel pool, plastic reclining chairs, dirty hair, and an ice machine. It has a little white diving board. It looked like a fantasy of some kind of life, backyard happiness that the house didn't fit with all its brown furniture inside and the smell of potatoes and peanuts. In the kitchen, there was a bucket, a white one with handles and no lid. It was filled with peanuts that had no shells. I thought of them as naked, needing their clothes, a cover. I imagined my eating them would keep them warm. A coffee can of raisins sat nearby with a tube of Dixie cups next to it. That was snack. Anytime we wanted, peanuts and raisins, hard and mushy body parts, free food. In the cabinet, there was never cereal, but there were big boxes of instant mashed potatoes, institutional size, add water, milk and butter if you have it. There are 3 brothers, but only one other girl, foster like me, quiet. There are 7 of us, 5 kids, no names. The mother tells me to take a shower before bed on my first night. I stand in the bathroom scared and silent, a brown towel on the toilet seat, tiny bar of soap in my hand from a plastic travel care package that the worker handed me. I shrug off white slip-on tennis shoes, strip off jeans and a gray sweatshirt, white underwear, white bra, white tank top, all clothes from the folded stack in the free closet at the cottage. The other kids called them cottage clothes. They're jail whites. I stand under the shower and stare at the wall, big swirls of brown flowers and ceramic tile. I pretend I'm on vacation, a waterfall, no home to worry about. I taste the water and spit it out. Iron, blood. I look down at myself, small pink nipples, large hips, fleshy butt. I look like a young woman. My arms, freckled and shaky, held out in front of me. I follow the length to my hands, hold them open. They're children's hands, small, thin nails, nervous fidgeting. The scars from my mother on the top of my left hand. I drop my arms and let the water run over my head, burning my eyes with bar soap streaming down from my hair, the only shampoo. I turn off the water to the rumbling of giggling. I dry off to the sounds of boys banging, jockeying for position, and stifled laughter. I walk out of the bathroom to a wall of the 3 of them. They taunt me. Go ahead and tell. Won't matter. You're ours. They've made holes in the door to watch foster girls undress, bathe, shit. Nowhere is safe. Now I won't wash. I will hold my poop until I ache, pee in the backyard around the side of the house when the burn gets too bad. I will never let them see me again. I walk past them and shrug, act. I go to school, outside lineup. I'm the new girl. I don't know anyone, and I don't know how to get back to Oakland. I need to get out of this heat. The air is not right here. There's no breeze, no bay. It's stifling. I dream of my sister, of Berkeley wind, the stench of Telegraph Avenue. I smell lavender and sandalwood, and I gag, but I want to cry too. I wonder what my people are doing. I wake up and clutch my stomach, bending over and squeezing, biting my cheeks. Why did I tell? I sit in a right-handed wooden student desk and read, but I don't know what I'm reading anymore. I don't raise my hand. I don't hear my name called. Nobody talks to me. Everybody stares. After lunch, there is more time to eat here. The free lunch line is shorter. I stand in the line for my classroom and explain to the other girls how to give a blowjob. Suck hard at the top sometimes. Let your spit pool. They tell the line monitor. The foster mother shows up and takes me home. It happens like a dream. Fuzzy, jumpy, fast, only staring, cartoon mouths moving with monotone sound. Wah, wah, wah. I don't say a word. Act. I walk in the house and go straight to the kitchen, grab a coffee mug, pour in some water, a little less milk, no need to measure. I've eaten this 3 times a day for days. I add the potato flakes and put the cup in the huge microwave, turn the dial timer to 2 minutes. I love microwaves. We never had one. I can make anything hot. I like the heat on my tongue. I want my mouth to burn. While it cooks, I scoop the peanuts, sprinkle in some raisins, cover the Dixie cup with my hand, shake. I hear the mother on the phone talking about me. I don't care. I have food. I am so hungry. It is exhausting trying to be invisible and yet seen. When they stare at me so long, I decide to give them something to stare at. I told them a story in the line. That's what I did. A girl lost, pain made visible, voice, hunger writ on my skin. A Blue County car pulls up. Get your stuff, a too young social worker tells me. She sighs to the mother, sorry for the trouble. I go to the bathroom and hear the boys getting ready for school in the next room. I turn on the water and wait, listening for them to get quiet, start to watch. I scream, they are watching me, at the top of my lungs. I don't stop. I hear the boys stumbling, the mother running, the worker screams back at me from outside the door, open the door. I unlock and swing it open, stand there, backpack on, ready to go. I glare at them all and say, there are holes in the door and the boys watch the girls and everybody knows and nobody says anything and they see everything. Or I say nothing. I remember both. I walk out to the car as the mother shakes her head. The worker walks towards me with a clown red frown, her too tan makeup running around her neck in the Livermore heat. She drives back towards the Bay Area, the sun setting in front of us, orange and pink and yellow, smog around the edges. I lay my hand on my backpack, laying in my lap. The hard, flat square of the book inside presses against my leg. I will keep it with me, one of the only things from that life. Years and years later, I will hold this book thinking about words and survival and stories and stubborn belief and all the ways I was able to survive that so many others weren't. I will write my own story. I will help others write theirs. I will find as many of us as I can. Thank you. Yay! My people. Thank you guys. The only parts I start to cry is when I think about you guys writing. That's the funny part. Bye. Okay, so we have a few minutes for questions or answers if you have some. But questions? Hey, lovey. Hannah, wait, Hannah's gonna bring you the mic. I love it that I'm getting to see some of you I haven't seen for so long. Run, Hannah, pretend you're on Oprah.
Where am I going?
Way back corner. Oprah's not even on anymore. Sorry.
Hi guys, I'm Allison, for y'all who don't know me. So A, where can we buy your work? And B, will you sign my boob someday?
Oh my God. So I love you. So I believe that writers are literary rock stars. That's what she's referring to. So I think, sometimes you have to get signatures. I'll totally sign your boob, but probably not on campus. Like so writing a book is hard, right? And it takes a long time. And I think that so many times, especially in my writing classes, I love it when my students come in and what do you want to do? I want to write a book. I'm going to, tell my story, or I want to write science fiction. And they envision that you're going to do this, and 6 months later, it's going to be published. And then you're clearly going to be a New York Times bestseller and all of these things, right? That's not really the reality of a writing life. A writing life is a lot of hard work, a lot of rejections, a lot of searching, and typically that you need another job, right, to support that life. I'm lucky enough that I have a job that I feel like not only supports that life, but enriches it. But all of this is to say, I'm in my 3rd revisions. An agent is taking some care, and so I'm hoping that it'll be out early next year. That's my hope. Yeah, my goal is March of 2020. That's what I've pushed for, because that's my birthday. So, but until then, I will say, do any of you know about the Hook? So the Hook in Cedar Rapids now also has the Hook in Iowa City. And so I'm often a featured reader for one of those. And I travel, I do stuff. You know where to find me. Yes. Oh, sorry, we'll get back there first, Hannah. Hey, Barbara.
People who know me say she does not need a microphone. Okay. First, thank you for surviving. Thank you for being candid. And thank you for being at Kirkwood. It's great.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. You might have seen this and say, of course I know about this. What are you? But about 6 weeks ago in the Gazette was an article about aging out and a variety of things. And it sounded, I cut it out as I do every week about, I'm going to get involved in that. But that one, I'm absolutely. And it sounded as if there was a program, and it was talking about social service. It sounded like there was a program in the making. Yes. And I thought, Kirkwood needs to it needs to be within 1 year, just like we do for military, there needs to be, it's just so perfect of a walk-in, and it needs to start in junior high and like that. And that there's just no question that they're capable and that we want them, and that the teachers will take them home and let them live in their backyard with really cool tents over the summer. So anyway, I really want to work with you and anybody else in saying, and just like also, do you all know that Kirkwood, we have instructors who teach in Anamosa and in different prison situations, and we get paid just like here. So I would love to do that.
Okay, so now expect the email.
All right.
So there's a lot going on actually in terms of the legislature in the Midwest in particular, and I'm not sure exactly what that's about, but I would argue that there's been a spike in foster care cases, foster kids, since what's called the opioid epidemic. The crack epidemic was not called that, so I want to be super clear about that. But there's a lot of white kids at risk right now, so there's a lot of attention being paid to foster kids. And so while I think that's incredible and valuable and we need it, I also have a little bit of resentment about who gets noticed and when that happens. But in terms of the legislature in Iowa, for example, there's a lot of movement to try to make aging out move from 18 to 21 if you are engaged in education, which I think would be, it's the way to at least find a little access point of some sort. And I think that a community college such as Kirkwood, we're such a leader in so many ways, and I think we could be such a powerhouse. And so I'm, consistently kind of trying to be aware of what's happening there. But my first year here, I did a writing group for foster kids, and I really just did it by announcing it to different colleagues who then shared it with classes. And I put up flyers, and I thought, maybe 2 people would show up. And 12 people showed up, and we had a really great this is not for credit. I mean, they just showed up, right? And every week we wrote and talked about our experiences with belonging and home. It was not counseling, I want to be clear, but it was community, right? What did you say? Yes, it was cathartic because of the community, right? It felt like a safe space. The other thing to know about foster kids is part of the reason we get lost is, you know, when you come to college, you do like a FAFSA or various forms, only on the FAFSA does it say, were you ever a ward of the court? So that's pretty interesting because that implies that your parental rights were stripped, right? So that's my case. I was a ward of the court. So the court became my parent when I was 11. But a lot of people are in foster care who are not made wards of the court, or who are in for a short period of time and go home, or who are staying with extended family and aren't technically foster kids, but they're displaced in lots of ways, right? So far there isn't a way to track us. And maybe some of us don't want to be tracked. But I do think just more awareness and the changing legislator ideas could help, right? So I think that there's some movement happening. So I'll email you. Any other questions? Okay, and then we'll come down here. Hey, Billy.
How would you say some of your unique experiences with adversity affect your perspective on just day-to-day life?
Yeah, so I'm going to say something that's a little blunt, and then I'll back up from it a little bit. So, you know, the week after spring break, sometimes you get a lot of those emails that are like, you know, I'm still in Mexico. I can't really get to class today. What did we do? No. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so some of my perspective is no. Like, the privilege there is so entrenched that sometimes I'm like, no, it is such an honor to get to be here. And that doesn't mean sometimes it is not a pain in the butt, right? Or professors do something that irritates you or vice versa, but we're a community, right? And I think that sometimes that roughens me up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? But then as my students know, I am laid back, right? I'm super open. My pedagogy or teaching style is a feminist one, but it's also one that's based on inclusion and realization that we're all different, right? But I think sometimes too, that laid backness gets, you know, I'm also tough. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of do a little bit of both. You probably know that we just had a midterm, right? But I kind of feel like my perspective consistently reminds me, oh baby, there's way worse. Do you know what I'm saying? Way worse. And that doesn't mean that some days I don't go home. Some of y'all are on my Facebook. That doesn't mean someday, you know, I don't go home and it's like everything, you know, that was the worst day ever. That was hard. I wish I would have done better, et cetera. There's way worse. Way worse. In the past 3 weeks, I found out about a student who's homeless. We don't know what we're all going through until we actually talk to each other. You know? Did that answer your question? Willow, you want? Oh, wait. My girl, I love that hoodie. That was our last class.
Was there any single moment that inspired you to write your book, or was there something in particular that just pushed you and made you realize you need to write a book?
Yes, so it's kind of a weird story. So when I was an undergrad at North Carolina, I really liked this professor. She was incredible in class. I just loved her. I thought I kind of started to worship her a little bit, you know? And then I went to her office to meet with her, and I hedged a lot. My friend's gonna laugh, but I hedged a lot. So every time I would say something, I would say, you know, do you know what I mean? Is that what I say? You know what I mean? That's an insecurity thing, right? In part, and it's also part of where I grew up, that's how we talked. And she shamed me. She literally stopped the conversation and she said, you need to stop saying that. And I remember thinking, I came in here to find a safe space. And she made me feel ashamed of how I spoke. And so I walked out thinking, I am never going back in there again, but you know, I'm really stubborn. So I was also like, and I'm gonna learn how to talk the way she wants me to, but then I'm not going to talk that way. Like I almost wanted to like shift the whole thing. And then just a short few years later, I was introduced to the writing of Ariel Gore, who's also from the Bay Area. And I reached out to her in that way that sometimes we reach out to authors and it doesn't go well, but it went really well. And she contacted me back. We ended up meeting. I went to a retreat with her. And so she was the one that really fostered this idea that I had a voice, I had a story to be told. And if I didn't tell it in the language to which the Academy was accustomed, that would be okay too. And she'd written 10 books. So I was like, I'm going to believe what she says. And then I started, it's hard. So I started writing and writing and writing. And I think at first it was a little bit too therapy, like a little journal, like a little too, I'm going to tell the whole story every moment. And that's not what a memoir is. A memoir is really, I'm going to look at this one moment and I'm going to talk about it and show you. And I'm also going to make some connections, right, that we can all find a way in. So it's taken a while, right? But the first time I ever was published was a story about my mother abusing me. And I was really, really scared. And it got good reception and it was just re-released this year. So I feel like I feel like this is going to sound cliche, but that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I just, in part because of white privilege, found a path. If that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for one more. What? Jennifer. Oh, Lord. Look, Hannah's running. Cracks me up. I'm sorry about my cough.
Aisha.
Hi.
So I know this semester with your endowed chair, you've had an opportunity to focus on your writing in ways maybe that you haven't in sort of concentrated periods of
Yes.
time in the past. And I know that you're writing about a deeply personal subject. Can you talk about how both of those things impacted your writing process? Did you discover that you did something differently than you had in the past with the time and with the topic?
Yeah, so the first thing I realized was, and I kind of had a glimpse of this before, but we all think we can work at home. Not the case. And when I tried, I made a lot of muffins. So, I really quickly figured out that actually if I was going to engage with this process and take advantage of such a gift like an endowed chair, which really just gives you 2 less classes in one semester, which is a lot, I was going to have to make space and treat it as a job. And I've been writing for 10 years, but I don't know that I've ever had the chance economically to treat it as a job, if that makes sense. And so I did little things, like at first I checked out different spaces, like a Merge in Iowa City, you can rent office space super, super, super cheap. It's like a shared table situation. And I thought about that and I was gonna do that, but then it felt a little too close. So if anyone knows me, I just took up residence at the coffee shop. And I would make it like, this is my date and time. And until recently, it's kind of wrapping up now. And I've started letting my nonfiction class know, for example, I'll be here Sunday from 1 to 4 if you guys want to come write. But prior to that, I wasn't letting anyone know where I was. My best friend can attest, I would just disappear. But that was important too. Like I figured out, I had to block out this time and really take care. And then I was also really, again, lucky enough that Ariel Gore, who I mentioned, worked with me really, really closely on my first edit and gave me some really good feedback. That was also scary, right? We're getting used to as professors, I hand it back with all the red and I'm like, don't worry. Just, it's great. I just put lots of notes. And then I got those back and I was like, oh, so I little humility, little humble. But the opportunity to have that time, I really can't speak of it enough. The only other time I've had any kind of experience like that was 2 summers ago when I flew back to California to retrace. And in part that was because of Kirkwood too, because I worked that summer and got money that I could do that. So it was just such a valuable experience. I mean, if I had my way, every professor would get 1 semester or 2, depending on how you split it up, right? Just to have time to work on those kinds of projects, because I have to say, I know you didn't ask this, Jennifer, but it's helped my teaching. It's helped my teaching to come back, especially in my writing classes, to come back and be like, I know, and like we really get to talk about it in a different way. So at least I think it's helped my teaching. I don't know what they would say. But yeah, does that make sense? Okay. I think we're done, you guys. Thank you so much for coming. I was a little nervous, just because it's at work. So thank you so much for having me.